Hello, welcome. We're going to get started in a few minutes, so just letting everybody in to start with. Just in case people start showing up. Hello, Lena. Hello, Mina. Hello, Laura. Awesome. Hi, everybody. We're just giving folks a couple of minutes to log in because we're starting at around 9 o'clock Mountain Time, aka 11 o'clock Eastern Time. So we'll just give folks some time here. If you are so inclined, please do say hello in the chat. I'm pretty sure, Josie, we have that enabled. So just drop in there your name and introduce yourself, what city you're coming from, what organization you're coming from, and then we can say hello to you. And we'll get started in a minute or two. And if you know the treaty territory that you're joining us from, we love learning about that as well, because there's always more out there than we connect to on a day-to-day basis. So definitely drop in there and introduce yourself. Hello, Jamie. So we got Jamie, Lynn. Yeah, I was just telling folks to drop their a hello in the chat. Make sure that the chat also works because we're going to be doing some combos in there as well. And we'll just give folks another minute or two and get going on it. We have about 65 folks who are signed up for this. Some folks are joining us live and some folks are going to be listening to this afterwards. So with that list, though, we'll make sure everybody gets the slides. So don't worry about taking too many notes, and don't worry about, yeah, basically anything to do with recording. We got that covered. So slides and recording will come your guys' way. It says the chat is disabled. There you go, Josie. Maybe you can take a look at the chat. There we go. That's why we like to do these little check-ins before we really get going on things. Thanks whoever said that. It says anonymous attendee. Awesome. Okay, we'll give folks another minute to just get themselves settled, and we'll get going right away. Hi, Colin. Hello, Valerie, as well. And yeah, welcome everybody. Okay, should we try the chat again? Does anybody want to try the chat again and give us some feedback if we're in business now? Let's see. And if not, whoever was the anonymous tipster, you can let us know if it's still disabled. It does look like the Q&A is working. So worst case scenario, we've got that going for us. Chat is still disabled for Colin as well. Well, you know what, you guys, let's, we can, there's a person raising their hand. There we go. Hi, Jamie. You just have to unmute now. There you go.
Hello. My chat is not working as well.
That's all right. You know what? I'm just going to allow everybody to chat because then we've got ourselves figured out.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, there we go. Then we're not stuck. Awesome. And then everybody can also meet each other. Feel free to keep your cameras off. I also know it's you know, sometimes unnerving, but that's also okay to stay anonymous. So there we go. Awesome. So 9:03 for me in Calgary time, which also means that it's time for us to get moving here because it's just after 11 for folks coming from Ontario. So welcome everybody. Really excited to have you here, and sorry that we can't figure out our chat, but everybody's allowed to has a permission to just speak up in here. And if you don't, just raise your hand and we'll make sure we can troubleshoot it. Jamie, you've got your hand up. Did you have some technical difficulties we need to address? No, you're good to go. And oh, now it looks like our chat is back on. So welcome. Yeah, so if you guys want to say hello in the chat and tell us where you're coming from. And as you do that, I'll make sure we give everybody permission to chat, and then we'll throw up the deck to get moving on our presentation. So Josie is in the background. If you have any challenges, please communicate with her, and we can make sure we get you sorted. But in the meantime, we're going to get cracking here. So welcome everybody. My name is Alina Turner. I'm the co-founder of Help Seeker Tech. And the reason we were keen on inviting you today is we've been doing quite a bit of work in Ontario communities of late. And with the Ontario elections just fresh in everybody's minds, we always want to give an opportunity to share back and forth what we're learning in terms of social trends in the sector and public policy trends that might be relevant to our social sector partners. So most of you are, actually all of you are from Ontario. I think there's one person that is joining from Newfoundland, which is, apologies if this is not relevant. This was specifically tailored for Ontario elections. However, I think there's going to be some good content for you folks in Newfoundland as well. But just making sure you know why we're talking so much about Ontario. We wanted to bring all of you together as well to get the dialogue going on how we might ensure that social policy is prioritized in these new municipal leaders' agendas moving forward as well, and share some of the trends we're seeing across the country that might start to come up in your world as well as these new councils get their feet under them. So why did this conversation pique your interest? Would love to hear from you in the chat, or if you wanted to put up your hand, I'm happy to also kind of take it live as well. But yeah, I'm wondering if why folks are interested in this conversation, or what made you want to join this webinar today. And Josie, if there's anybody that drops anything in the chat, you can read it out to us as well, if folks are shy about unmuting. I see Valerie, you're unmuted. Did you want to chime in?
I was just on the chat.
Ah, okay.
Why I did. But now I've got your attention. The reason I'm on this is because, like you say, we've just had municipal elections, and ours is absolutely turned upside down. You know, I've always been able to personally talk to the elected council and mayor, and it's a very small town, but now it's completely unknown. So I think there was one person who was returned out of 7. So so I'm interested in this now.
It's a thing now. It's a thing now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you betcha. You betcha. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess my next question, just to get your policy juices flowing this morning, and with these elections over, what are the top advocacy priorities for all of you that, and I mean, I can guess from the titles of your organizations, but I'd love to hear if anybody's willing to share. I'm more than happy to kind of hand the mic over to hear any insights on that. So I'm gonna see if anybody's unmuting. And you by no means do you have to, but would even sharing that in the chat. Let's see, Josie, do we have any takers in the chat on this question?
There's just 2 kind of comments. Carolyn says that it feels increasingly challenging with the provincial government to see needed change coming to fruition, looking for new tactics and approaches.
Mhm.
And Ashley Kwan says, a lot of people I work with are feeling dispirited about the possibilities of advocacy progress at the provincial level and feel
Mhm.
like there's more possibilities to change things municipally. So those are the
Mm.
comments.
That's great. That's great. That's great. So it may just be, it's a new day, it's a new context. We need some new tools, and we need to understand what might be going on in these decision makers' minds as well. Okay, perfect. I think I can help you, or at least give you some pointers that you can consider in your approach. So before we get into this, thank you everybody for joining us from Ontario, and I know you're from different territories. I'm joining you personally from Treaty 7, which is in Calgary, Alberta, and don't hold that against me. Help Seekers team is all over Canada. So we've got lots of folks in Ontario as well, and basically coast to coast to coast. So we're a national organization, but I'm personally joining you from Treaty 7. And with that, I wanted to also just tell you two seconds about who we are and why we're putting this on. Not super familiar, but we're a data software and insights company. It's a B Corp organization, so we're a social enterprise that solely focuses on social impact, and we build tools. So we build data, we build data tools and software products, and then we empower social impact leaders to make a difference. We work with municipalities. Those tend to be our most kind of successful partnerships in terms of growth, but that also gives us an inside scoop on how they think about social policy as well. But we also know that none of this work happens without our frontline social safety net teams, and we've been investing more and more in our R&D, or research and development, to find ways to support the charitable and nonprofit sector that's on the front line. There's only so much you can do at the policy level without supporting our front lines in a new way. So part of our work is, like I said, developing solutions, but it's also to bring these solutions into the real world with everybody on board. That might be at the service delivery, the decision maker, policy levels. And of course, the important ones are the clients as well. So Navigi is an example of a product that is developed for the clients. It's obviously has to be free and all that type of stuff. Carto is a product that's built for data insights. So I'm going to giving you some insights from these learnings that we've had, because that's obviously the value out of why you came here. So wanting to just tell you 2 seconds about us so that you know who you're talking, who you're getting kind of advice from. Some of our, and I said the reason we're able to host this webinar and bring some of these insights is because we're in these conversations, these policy conversations all over the country. So we get a bit of an inside scoop on how these policies get developed. We partner with charitable providers that are looking at data-driven growth. So a lot of the stuff I'm going to tell you might be data heavy, but I'm going to try to break it down in a way that is easy to apply to your sector and your pain points as well. So I'm going to start with a couple of things that we're seeing at the municipal level, trends in social infrastructure planning. So these are approaches to social policy that we're seeing emerge at the local municipal level, whether that's a small city or a big city. I'm gonna reference some examples that are close to home for you in Ontario, but I'm also going to tell you how those relate to what's happening in other parts of the country, because obviously everything's entwined, and political levels are constantly talking to each other and interacting in different ways. So before I do that, let me give you a little overview of what we mean when we say social infrastructure planning. And it's not necessarily our term. It's a term that's used often to describe this range of decisions that's made about service provider organizations, levels of government and funders. So these are things that are happening at various levels of our social safety net. But on the programs, services, policies, networks, collaborations, models of delivery that exist to support well-being of individuals, families, and communities. So decisions and how we make decisions at these various levels, they all culminate in how our social infrastructure planning actually progresses. Of course, and those of you that know this, when it comes to policy, it's very, very complex, and not everybody has the same definitions, and not everybody's on the same page about what the plan should be. And that's why we're wanting to have some of these conversations around tactics as well, because we can then maybe find a path forward together that's better for everybody. So one caveat that our legal team always likes to remind me of is we're not giving legal advice. We're not giving you lobbying advice. One caveat for you to also be aware of for your organization is that the rules for lobbying, there's municipal, there's provincial, there's national rules. They often vary locally, especially in Ontario, compared to other jurisdictions. So there's municipalities, and I don't know if anybody's here from Burlington, but they have very stringent lobbying laws, and other municipalities are basically silent on it. So you always want to make sure you review those municipal contexts. And of course, if I'm sure you're very keenly aware of this, but just a caveat there. And some of the general guidelines, these are the CRA ones, and those are good rules of thumb in terms of what's allowed, not allowed. Of course, everything from info, research, disseminating opinions, advocacy, that's all good. There's some things that are obviously not so good. So the direct support of the opposition and candidates would not be. So with that caveat being said, let's kind of get into the big picture social trends that are going to be top of mind for your newly elected leaders. And I'm going to start high level, and then I'm going to drill down into some specific examples. And and I'll explain why Chrystia Freeland is on there, and why the CAO of the City of Ottawa is on there as well in a second. So first and foremost is that the macroeconomics of impacting Canada and our economy are always going to be a lens through which policy decisions are being made, and that's a no-brainer. It's also how we run our households, and it's also how we run our organizations. And it's the same thing around running government. Inflationary depression is what the technical term is, what's happening right now. And the challenge with inflationary depression is that it's historically linked to long-term recessionary conditions. Recessions, as you know, are times where social risks and social challenges also increase. But what's really, really important here for your municipal players and the types of policy positions that have been coming forward, especially in changes in municipal leaders, has been the link between inflationary depression to so-called social disorder, right? So social disorder is a highly contested term, and we can get into why that's a problematic term. But there's a top of mind trend nationally around public safety and social disorder. So visible forms of homelessness, mental health and addictions, and the criminalization of poverty is the other concern that we have. So this is one for you to be on the lookout for it, because again, historically, when we see these kinds of depressions, there's legit concerns when it comes to our lower income families as well, that there's trends that we see. So in the last recession, we saw cheaper illicit substances being so-called chosen, because again, people have less income, so they'll switch substance use to the cheaper version. Cheaper substances are much more riskier to health impacts, and I know we've got folks from the harm reduction sector that are deeply entrenched in this work, and those carry those higher health risks. Those also become much more it's a dangerous and slippery slope, because that is also how this public concern around public safety gets kind of raised more and more. So be on the lookout for more criminalization of poverty and public policy shifts towards that. That's one kind of caution I would have around what I've seen in other communities, especially what we're seeing in the US right now is a hard turn right in some communities because of that. The economic hardship on mental health, I know you're seeing that as well. It's linked in the literature to certain types of substance use behavior changes as well. So be on the lookout in your client population as well, that economic hardship might, right, and probe for that in your caseworkers as well. Like, are we seeing changes in how mental health is being experienced by our client group? And be on the lookout for changes in substance use. So whereas a client might have had a particular pattern of substance use, is that shifting? And is it shifting to cheaper drugs because of these income trends as well? It's not even, and it's always racialized as well. You have to apply that critical lens as well to this analysis. So that's the piece to be on the lookout for. Now, how that relates to Freeland on this slide is that she's out supporting the Bank of Canada's interest rate hikes. Those interest rate hikes are again going to add pressure to lower income households. The government is under a ton of pressure right now to take measures around poverty reduction and supporting families in low income situations with subsidies or and again, I know there's folks from the food sector, and the report from the Food Banks of Canada came out again, speaking to this connection between poverty and food bank usage and the inflationary pressures. So keep that pressure up on your federal representatives around taking actionable steps or making actionable decisions that see more relief coming for those low-income families. I think that food bank report was a great example of keeping that pressure up, and we're going to need to do that continuously to ensure that the feds are coming through on this too. The reason I put the city of Ottawa's Ottawa on here and the Freedom Convoy inquiry is that is going to continue to dominate headlines. But what that inquiry is also highlighting is the challenges municipalities have in negotiating their relationships with provincial and federal colleagues. And Ottawa is a perfect laboratory for this because it's the capital. You've got every kind of seat of power in this community. A new mayor. So not the incumbent that was not the incumbent, but the Catherine McKenna, who was deeply involved in the Freedom Convoy response as well. So it's a signal, right? There's things happening. That inquiry I would keep an eye out on, because that's also where we see negotiations around powers and who can do what. So your municipal leaders are also going to be paying attention to what the recommendations or what the findings of that inquiry will be. So these are stories I would kind of keep on your Google Trends watch and consider what that means. I mentioned this, and I'm going to give you an example of why I think this is a big one to watch. So when we look at the BC elections, and BC is only like a month, maybe less than a month ahead in terms of their election results. BC is a very left-leaning province as a whole. They've had an NDP government for many, many years. Approval ratings of Horwath were quite high. So Vancouver in particular is an even more left-leaning community. But what we saw there, and I want to stress this one, is a public safety pro-police candidate to win the election from the very left coalition supported incumbent mayor. And that's primarily because of the concern of across the public voting folks around violence and stranger attacks in Vancouver. So I think the stat was on average 4 stranger attacks are happening in Vancouver. Of course, if you know much about East Hastings, you'll probably guess that a lot of those are happening in that particular area of the community. But those are also things that are going to be jumping over as trends across communities. And again, I'd love to hear this if you're already seeing this or not. What's interesting though is leveraging, how might we leverage this in our public policy advocacy? So how do we hamper this so we don't lose the gains that were made during the defunding the police movement that is still there, right? It's still simmering, but it's not as strong as it was last year or the year before. So is there ways that we can still push that message forward that we need a mental health response with our policing response? And how do we not lose the focus on challenging racialized population treatment by these institutions? So how do we position properly, knowing that these trends might be there and some of these candidates have made promises that they're going to have a tough on crime approach? I'm not saying Ken Sim said that publicly. I'm saying that these are the sentiments that are pervading some of these election dialogue. So be on the lookout for that if you're not already. There's also shifting mandates on social issues. So what we've been seeing over the last, I would say, at least a good 3 years, and I think these trends are even longer, but the big one is that provincial government no longer owns that government mandate for social issues. And to be fair to them, they've been purposely moving that down the line to local governments for a long time, especially in Ontario. But that trend is, there's no sightlines on that coming back currently. Yet municipalities, and this is what we're hearing from our municipal partners, and Ontario inclusive, is that they're under a huge amount of pressure from the public and media to solve these urgent issues. And when I say urgent, it's usually the visible aspects. So that sometimes takes away from the preventative work. So if you're in work that is let's say not to do with chronic homelessness or not to do with things that are related to community safety or perception of safety, sometimes those things get let's say forgotten because the mandate is so focused on getting downtown clean. So how do we continue to make a business case for preventative services so that we're not, again, in 20 years, picking up the pieces of these policy decisions being made today? So having that ability to tell the story and connecting it to these pressure points is going to be important. But let's also be aware that when they're looking at their budgets and they're under, a fiscal situation that's extremely challenged by these inflationary trends I mentioned before, that they're going to be needing to make hard decisions and hard choices. So we're going to need to be even further along in our connecting our policy recommendation to these immediate urgent pressures as well. Municipal governments are building their own capacity as well. They're getting much savvier around their data-led strategies as well. So take a look at some of the newer documents that are coming out of municipal governments and how sophisticated they're becoming around their financial modeling around social challenges. So they're starting to use things like machine learning in projecting homelessness trends or in projecting their social spending as well. And that's again because the technology sector has started to unlock this as a market, as an industry segment that they're selling and developing products for. So that means that municipalities might know more than we're used to when it comes to data trends, and they might know something you don't know. So so be aware, read those documents, read those reports, take a look at their sources of information. What is it, Statistics Canada census, or are they starting to use Google Trends? Are they starting to use Twitter sentiment to understand what's happening in terms of social challenges and what their public are prioritizing? And I think that connection to municipal election is a really good example, because we're seeing Twitter as a much more, sorry, this just tells me I'm about halfway through. So the implication is, again, having your finger on the pulse when it comes to how those reports are being written, which consulting groups are being hired right? And what tools those consulting groups are using to write those reports as well. Because as you guys know, most of these public policy decisions when it comes to municipalities are not necessarily written by administration. They're usually contracted out to an external group, or a Deloitte, Accenture sometimes, or smaller boutique consulting groups as well. So here's a quote from a municipal leader. And again, we're going to keep everything anonymous, but maybe you can guess who these might be. So if the provincial government won't move, our community will. But every day there's new services, changes in staff, and we can't get a handle on what we really have and what we're missing. This is a big sentiment. Administration is getting called forward by the elected officials, and then they're getting called out that they don't know what's happening in their own backyard. So there's this pressure on them to have a better handle on the operators of their social infrastructure. So they're getting questions like, so, okay, you're coming to me with a new ask for another food service, but didn't you just do that last week? Didn't you just ask me for 5 million for the food bank last week? Oh, this is a food center. Well, how is a food center different than a food bank? Okay, so why do we have an HIV clinic and then we have a harm reduction clinic? How are those different? So they're getting pressured to make the business case for these expenditures and how they're different, and then who else is operating in the community, or do we have enough, or what are the gaps and duplications, and it can't be a general statement anymore, right? The publicly elected officials are very, I don't know, and if you follow this stuff and look at your council minutes and see the kinds of questions that are being asked. I was just reviewing some, and it was all the way to the level of, show me the data elements that funded homelessness agency is collecting, so that I can see and I can justify this to the auditor that this was an eligible expense. So elected officials are asking those questions. It's very interesting, but it's also things to be aware of. So how I might tackle this is build your service menu. If you don't know what a service menu might be, the best way of thinking about it is like literally like going to a restaurant and here's your service menu and your ingredients list, so that you can be ready for those questions and understand exactly what you're offering to which demographic group and to what level of need, what complexity level. Those basics are huge. Just so you guys know too, we're going to send you a package of this stuff, of these practical tools, so you can kind of fill your boots if you need examples and different tools to use after. As kind of, I don't want to call it homework, but it's like toolkit, right? So come so that you can learn the introduction, but then we'll give you some of the tools to go away and probe this further with your team if you find any value in these ideas. So here's another quote from another person in the municipal government. Even in the smallest communities, there's many action tables, committees, working groups, and coalitions working on overlapping issues. Mapping these doesn't replace the need to understand what the contribution of organizations are and how those things fit together. So being ready on how you fit into the social safety net and your unique contribution is going to be really key. And just having that stuff in your back pocket, knowing that these are the conversations they're having to have about budgets. The other trend, and I know you know this already, but community safety and well-being is not only one of the pervasive trends in Ontario, but there's no stopping its influence in movement across the country. So you know what that means. If it's taking foothold in Ontario, and now it's actually jumping into BC and Alberta, which is going to mean that it's going to start drift back and forth across the country as a policy trend. So municipalities come together and they share ideas about what they're doing. They share best practices. The FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities conference is coming up. One of their number one issue area is community safety and well-being, right? So it's exactly those public safety, social disorder, getting downtown back on track types of conversations that municipal leaders are having. And of course, that's going to trickle down to the administration and the decision makers around budgets as well. So, you know, and if you don't know, Ontario government enacted legislation requiring that all municipalities, regardless of whether they have a social mandate or not, have to create a community well-being and safety strategy or plan. So that will provide an opportunity for you to engage and influence what's in that plan, and ensuring that your organization's mandate is reflected appropriately. But that's going to become a key vehicle to bring these system planner organizations together. So it could be the municipality, and police is always at that table, because there's a safety component there, of course. And there's, of course, the crime prevention type of organizations, but there's also those preventative organizations. So folks that are working on adverse childhood experiences, childcare, youth services, seniors. So if there's a way that you can connect your work to safety and well-being, that would also be a major value add as well. So the other thing to know is that municipalities are struggling on how the heck to implement these plans. Just like homelessness plans of yesteryear were on trend. And I'm not saying homelessness plans are not still there. I'm like a huge homelessness, systems planner advocate. But what I'm seeing now is that these are almost kind of becoming, like, from a hierarchy perspective, the community safety and well-being plan is almost becoming like the integrator of all these other plans. So you've got community safety and well-being, and then you've got housing and homelessness, and you've got food security, poverty reduction, immigration and settlement, and they're all seeming to kind of trickle up into this one. Not always, and interestingly, it's interesting that community safety and well-being became that trend and not poverty reduction. But I think we probably can guess that it's with this being connected to the Ford government, why safety became the primary vehicle to integrate these other components. So be on the lookout for that. Implication is, over the next 2 years, the community safety and well-being lens through social issues is going to continue to frame and likely impact funding. And we're already seeing funds that are specifically coming out around this. So being ready for that is key. Again, I don't know if I talked about data trends, but this is an example of the data that municipalities are using to start looking at these challenges. So as you can see here, this is the crime severity index. Municipal leaders watch this like hawks. Where do their communities come out on the crime severity index? And those are, I think McLean does a big report on this. So definitely put this in your Google Trends to keep on track of it and know where your community's trending up and down on this. This is going to be a big one. They get tons and tons of calls when their community goes up or down in these. Thunder Bay is a great and unfortunate example of this as well, but know where your community fits on this, because they are for sure watching it. The other one that they're really concerned about is and it's because the public is always concerned about public safety, right? So high political and public interest that I'm seeing right now is around this incidents reported by police. So these are, again, things that come to council all the time. And administration is always then asked, well, what are you doing? What are you doing about this? What is our social spending doing to prevent crime going up? And as you can see here, we've got plus 8% overall in across Canada, but that's the same in Ontario trends. I don't think I saw one community in Ontario where crime went down, which is of course a concern. And with the reopening after COVID, this becomes a big public visibility thing, right? So I'm telling you this because this is what they're looking at right now. And so and I'm going to give you an example and not name the community, but in one instance, the social spending was canceled in one, not the full social spending, but a big chunk of social spending on charities and nonprofits was canceled. And that money, from the mayor's words, went to more policing. So I'm not kidding when I say this, be ready for that. And that impacted the entire social safety net in that community, because the money was going to child intervention, to recreational programs, to food security, to housing and homelessness supports, et cetera. So here's another one from a community safety well-being lead. Our challenge now is, how are we going to turn these aspirational objectives of these community safety plans into concrete and measurable proof that we're doing what our community asked for? So again, just reaffirming, how do we connect our work as charities and nonprofits that might be on the range of preventative measures or intervention measures? How do we connect that to these community well-being strategies? And so the action, or the opportunity number 2 for you to consider, is linking your strategy to the community well-being and safety plan. So map those strategic objectives. So get the report, look at their objectives, and understand, remember that when I said the service menu, so that thumbprint of your organization, and see how you map against those objectives, right? So once you do that, then identifying which strategic objectives or benchmarks you can positively contribute to and demonstrate impact with data. So making sure your data collection allows for you to not just say, but also prove through data that this is true. Because again, they're looking for actionable things. They're getting called out at council. Why are you spending on this money on this program versus that program? What's this program's impact versus that program's impact? What's the return on investment over here versus over there? These are the things that they're getting asked for. So making sure you've got your kind of what is it called, dots and crosses and all that good stuff. Another trend that we're seeing, this concept of, and I don't know if this is the right words, but I'm just going to go with it, single issue implementation. So there's more and more recognition. I think we've all been saying this because we're listening to our clients, but funders are getting it, and government and foundations are saying these words to us back, right? That single issue responses don't address the complexity of needs of individuals. And we're not getting at root causes if we only focus on one area of need. So we can't solve the community's holistic needs if we only invest in policing, if we only invest in food supports, if we only invest in immigration and settlement supports. We need an entire holistic response. So that's of course going to be reinforced by that community well-being safety legislation that calls for an integrated response. But how that manifests is in practice is going to be more and more funding that's going into things that reference person-centered program design. Sometimes it's called human-centered design approaches. So showing how, you're not just doing, and I keep picking on food, and I'm sorry, I'll pick on harm reduction services, because I'm very familiar with those, having worked in those services a long time. But you're not just exchanging needles, right? You're building connections, you're building pathways out of homelessness, you're developing an easy ramp into treatment and detox services. But at the end of the day, it's still person-centered. So you're not just providing the needle, you're also you're probably connecting them to food supports, you're probably transporting them to a shelter for a safe place to be. So think how, yes, you might be doing this 1 or 2, 3 immediate things, but those things are connected to a bigger human-centered approach to that person's needs, and you're leveraging your community partners to achieve it. That's the other thing that they're going to be looking for, is how are we working as an ecosystem, complementing each other's strengths, not duplicating, complementing. And I think that's this whole blue ocean versus red ocean analogy in strategic thinking, to say, there's so much to do. How do we do it together in a healthy and collaborative way? So that's the message on this slide. So the implication is that funders will focus more on whole person outcomes. That's this range of needs that person has for their well-being and safety to be achieved. That same thinking applies to the community as a whole. So rather than delivery of one particular program or service. So they might fund a particular program or service, but said service needs to demonstrate a line of sight to these holistic outcomes. And you know what? I think that's what we've been saying for a long time, that we don't just do, we're not one trick ponies in the sector, we do much more. Here's another quote from an unnamed executive director from a homelessness nonprofit. I worry about our collective myopic focus on ending homelessness over the past years without involving all other organizations and people that are helping the community. We haven't gone wide enough. And I'm actually going to the Canadian Alliance to a homelessness conference next week, so I might meet some of you guys there. But I think that rings true in other sectors as well, not just homelessness, that we have the insight now to see that everything's connected and that we need to plan differently around our social safety net. And it truly has to be a safety net or a safety network, like a network of supports. So that myopic focus on, we're going to end homelessness. We're not going to worry about food security. We're not going to worry about integration and cultural needs. We're just going to put people in housing. And trust me, I've been in the housing sector a long time. I know that's not what we do, but how do we connect in to safety strategies, to food and other population-specific strategies like seniors and youth, et cetera. So that's going to be, I think it's something that we're recognizing as well. So what's the opportunity for you to consider here? Mapping your network in detail. So again, in your toolkit, there's going to be a stakeholder mapping tool for something that you might do with your leadership team and your frontline staff to assess the degree to which your single issue network. And what I mean by that is you might theoretically make these connections at the strategic level, but is your referral practice, for instance, is how your frontline team works single siloed, or is it fully leveraging the network of supports out there? And it's fascinating. We just did this in Penticton, and we were mapping the homeless serving sector and their network. And interestingly, like it was actually very insular, right? So they weren't, and it was just simply because they've always only referred to these 10 organizations, and these 10 organizations referred to each other. And that was just kind of where the connections were. So the leaders of the Penticton strategy wanted to have this approach that was very, very holistic and person-centered, but the referral networks and the practice wasn't lined up to it. But everybody wanted to change it. They just didn't know until they did this exercise that they were that insular. So they were only leveraging about 10% of the entire network of supports that were available to their clients. So now what we're doing is actually like, let's mobilize, let's actually make these connections. Once this network is visible, you can start to understand the opportunities as well. So things to consider. What organizations do you most commonly share information with? What about referrals of clients? Which organizations do you receive from? And where are you in collaborative tables sitting with? What are the most common events and meetings you attend? Okay. And who do you compete, if you will, for funding against? Is this network large or small relative to the size of the social infrastructure in your community? So if your community is, let's say, 1,000 organizations that are doing these various components of well-being, are you interacting with 5% of them, 10% of them, 100% of them? No, I mean, nobody interacts with 100%, so don't worry about that. But if you're missing a chunk, there's potentially a missed opportunity there that you might want to consider, or not, right? But at least know about it. Okay, and who's similar and dissimilar? And you want to know that, because remember, we've got that service menu when you position your organization. You want to know, because again, the municipality is mapping all this stuff too, so they know how you compare to everybody else as well. Of course, I wouldn't be a help seeker if I didn't mention data-driven social planning and how important that's going to be moving forward. But I feel like I'm a broken record because you all know that as well. And I know everybody's really, really deep into their digitization process and their impact measurement and social return on investment, economic analysis of their programs. And I know you've been in there very, very deep. So I'm going to try to bring something new, some new insights to that conversation. We have lots of evidence that COVID accelerated the pace of digitalization in the nonprofit and charitable sector, and that's not an Ontario only trend. That same trend is happening in municipalities and provincial governments. There's massive undertakings and like seriously $100 million digitalization contracts going out right now to different technology firms to bring government into the 21st century, if you will, on appifying everything, making sure that decision support systems are being used for decisions instead of anecdotes. So the good news is it's going to take them forever because they're huge, because these projects are massive and modernization is not that swift. So that gives you a bit of a head start on your end because they're going to take time. But you're probably already getting some of these signals from your funders as well, that they're asking for data to come in different ways. They're signaling that they might be changing their reporting requirements. They're signaling that they might be doing new types of audits on your technology. Some of them are waking up to the fact that our sector doesn't necessarily have clarity on which privacy legislation they fall under. So they're starting to mobilize around that. The Center for Nonprofit Digital Resilience is a really good signal of that. I mean, why is that suddenly coming into existence? Who funded that, right? It's usually bigger entities that have a vested interest in advancing digitalization as well. So those expectations are definitely changing. I know this because we're in the technology sector and we are seeing more business because of this trend from these governments as well. The implication is that over the next 2 years, there's going to be a shift in the types of data that's going to be expected. So don't be surprised if people start asking you for new types of data, or they're asking questions about why you're collecting and the way you're collecting and the technology you're using to collect it. And that you're going to be likely continue to be asked to use multiple data sources. So client information, organizational, system, local, provincial, and that coming together in your case for support. So how you link data sets, right? Because they're going to be like, okay, you're serving 30% Indigenous people. Is that on trend with this sector? Is that higher or lower compared to your neighborhood characteristics? Is that changing faster or slower than the general community characteristics? So they're going to be starting to ask you to do some of these community level analytics and bringing your client data into that conversation. So be aware of that. Not everybody can afford these research and evaluation specialists to keep on top of this. So it might impact how you resource your teams to keep up with this. Here's another one. This is a privacy consultant for the nonprofit sector, and I reference privacy and data security. And he says, let's face it, we're behind when it comes to data and tech, but for good reason when you can't get grant funding for ops. So now we see funders shifting their perspective, willing to resource differently, but on the flip side, there are expectations that will follow. So be on the cutting edge, but not the bleeding edge, and make sure you can deliver on this if you are going to go after funding for digitization, because you're going to be held up as that, this is the poster child that everybody then follows. So see if you want to be the early adopter or the early majority on it, but no, it's coming. So how you might approach this, and again, there'll be more in your toolkit after this. Build your data strategy. So when I say that, I don't mean like wake up tomorrow morning with a 100-page document and $1 million in investment in this stuff. Incrementally, start thinking about it, start prodding, start getting yourself educated on what this means. So that incremental data and technology capacity within your strategic objectives. So make sure there's a bucket somewhere in your strategic objectives as you go into strategic planning. If some of you might already be there for 2023, have something in there to at least signal to your team and your board that you're recognizing that this is going to be of importance. You don't have to make it the be all end all, but start putting some strategic time into it. And of course, making sure that you're taking some operational steps on a quarter by quarter basis to move realistic steps forward on it. So don't do the expensive data strategy, especially if you're new to this stuff. Don't do a complicated technology stack especially if you don't even know what a technology stack is. That's a really good reason not to. Get educated, right? Get educated to start with your list of research questions that you need answered and when, and start looking at this as a work back approach. So if I need to know this information, so if I know in 10 months, I'm going to be coming up for a renewal of my funding, and my funders, and again, think, work back. What do my funders need to know? Ask them. Make sure that you're actually collecting it, right? And you're matching your capacity and resources to those needs. What do you need to know as an executive director? Don't just collect data because you've always done it this way. Start leveraging these new technologies that can actually answer your questions. Believe it or not, there's no business question, if you will, if that's the kind of technical term in industry. There's no business requirement that data cannot answer. It's really a matter of getting your strategy together to do that well and efficiently. It doesn't have to be a ton of money. We're working with this one organization that's a startup. They have 1 staff, but you can still do a lot even with 1 staff to get yourself ready for that funding. And that staff is now just multiplied because they made a successful business case, and it was just announced in a couple of weeks ago that they were successful with the government of Alberta because they were able to make that business case well. So that's the opportunity there. Use cases, requirements, inputs, outputs, capacity, and costs. This is how you would build that data strategy. So looking at this as an executive director, I need to see inflow and outflow across all my programs on a weekly basis so that I can understand and demonstrate increasing demand for our services. Your requirements, and this is stuff to like spell it out to your team so that they know what you need as a decision maker. I need an interactive data dashboard I can use for discussions internally and to show external stakeholders, such as my board or my funders, that I'm making an impact. Like, can you imagine showing up with an interactive dashboard and showing your impact? Boom. And it's live, right? It's today. Inputs. To get this data, I need program managers to complete an Excel template once a week. Like, it doesn't have to be expensive, right? You can get fancy, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't have to be fancy. Outputs. Build a dashboard. We need a Tableau or equivalent. Again, visualization tools are out there. Capacity and costs. Through TechSoup, which is a nonprofit discounted software license, we can get a Tableau license for $97 and free online training. So I'm kind of giving you like bite-sized bits and bobs to get yourself ready, because this becomes critical to your pitch as well. So that's the last opportunity I wanted to highlight. With that, I know we've got a few all of 4 minutes left, but I'm wondering if there's any big questions. Was this even useful to you guys? Should we do it again? Would love any feedback before we send you off and to continue the amazing impact you're making in our community. So thoughts, anybody that wants to chime in? Oh, Mina says, yes, thank you. Conversation is imperative with harm reduction. Extremely useful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, by all means. And we got lots to say, so extremely beneficial. Thanks for sharing. Awesome. I also promised you guys there's going to be like a package of these tools where like part of being a B Corp means we don't generate profit for profit. We generate profit to put it back into the sector. So sometimes we do that by doing more R&D on our technology. Sometimes we develop IP or intellectual property that then we create as a Creative Commons. So there's going to be a Creative Commons package that comes to you that you can freely share with your friends and family in the sector on how to like move some of these things forward. So look at it as a little homework, if you will. You don't have to do it. Obviously don't have to do it. Look at them as like toolkits to take this and see, like in your strategic planning, maybe that data strategy tool may be a good one to work with your board on or your leadership team on. Yes, of course, I will be sharing the slides and the recording and that toolkit I mentioned as well. We also, my team, I wanted to let you know, if you guys need like an hour with one of our experts, we would, in exchange for you telling feedback on our process, we're happy to kind of exchange that kind of this mutual benefit of you telling us if how we might make our stuff better if we give you like a free strategic session. So by all means, I'm actually gonna throw that app back on here to see. It's my colleague Jessie who wanted to do that. Oh, thank you. This one. So we'll do the learning materials in kind one-on-one, that data-led impact session for you guys. So Jessie is our executive vice president, and she wants to know, because she wants to then scale this out into a training program. So she's super keen on getting some early adapters that can help us develop it. We'll share the tools and walk you through a data led impact session, so you can get some ideas on strategic growth strategies specific to your sector, especially if you're in harm reduction or food security and you want something more tailored, political trends for your specific community. So I kind of talk generally about Ontario, but for those of you that are like, okay, about what's happening in Hamilton, we know all this stuff like at the granular level. And again, it's a mutual exchange, right? Because we know you don't have budgets, but you have insight. We have insight. So this way it's like it's a tit for tat. So it's in kind, because you're helping us to develop our stuff when we roll the stuff nationally as well. So that's the offer. That's her name and email address. Yeah, just 60 minutes if you want an in-depth for just your organization, maybe with your leadership team or your board, by all means. And yeah, if would love, we'll send a little questionnaire after as well to see if this was useful or not. And please do share this stuff with everyone in your circles. And I think that's it. We're right on time, How this affects governance? Yeah, I got lots of thoughts on that one. Governance, I had a conversation, and by all means, if folks need to drop off, I'll just take some of these questions while people are still here if they're interested. But governance is shifting quickly, because I was just chatting with the Canadian Association of Police Governance, which is a volunteers that are managing the public or policing. And they're facing the same pressures that we're already seeing in the charitable and nonprofit sectors. Those boards need to be kind of called to be more sophisticated, right? Because the pressure, your guys' needs are different today than they were 5 years ago. Your boards are going to need to be much more savvy and helpful when it comes to these kinds of challenges. So they need to be much more politically attuned. They need to be much more data-led, much more strategic. So the good old boards that just kind of sit back and it's a check mark on their resumes for when because they're practicing to be corporate board members or something like that. We can't be the practice grounds anymore. This is getting real quick. So I think we need to have different conversations and different expectations of our board members to truly gain the benefit of their value add to our organizational needs as well. So they too are going to be asked, and in turn, they're going to be asking you similar questions as I mentioned around funders. Well, what is the impact? How are you using technology? What's your data? How are you different than so-and-so? My buddy is on this board and it sounds like we're doing the same thing. Why are we doing the same thing? Right? So those kinds of questions, if they're not already happening to you, they're happening more. But I'm saying if they're expecting more, you should expect more as well. There we go. Awesome. Okay. Well, with that, if there's no further questions, we'll let you all go. Like I said, would love to have the one-on-ones with you guys if this is useful. And then we'll send the packages and info on next time we get to meet, hopefully soon. And see everybody that might be at the Canadian Alliance on Homelessness next week. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great one.